Okay.
If she
So
would.
if she wants an enthusiastic opening, do an opening that you both can agree is super enthusiastic and just use that opening for every episode.
But it's no, but he's not wrong. We could just
Right.
pick one and we can record it once and
Yeah.
have it be done. But yeah, if she wants an enthusiastic.
Right? I like that attitude.
Well, that means you still have to do it enthusiastically at least one time.
I'm super psyched to do it right now.
Good.
Super psyched. Go ahead. Start it off.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Kink Positive Podcast. I'm That Bad Teacher.
And I'm Master Arch.
We're a dom and a sub from opposite sides of the country that come together every week to share our love of kink and BDSM.
And we'll be sharing our perspectives as a professional dom and a professional educator. This podcast will contain adult topics and themes, so consider yourself warned.
We hope to lend our perspectives as kink professionals, but we are not therapists or medical professionals.
Follow us on Instagram at Kink Positive Podcast, at Elemental Kink, and at ThatBadTeacher. My Twitter is at All for Arch, and you can find us on Patreon at patreon.com/Kink Positive Podcast for ad-free video episodes.
That was the one.
Awesome.
Your friend was right.
Awesome.
That was the one. Nice. Today, we'll be talking about whatever we feel like because we didn't really plan this episode for you guys, but we needed a little bit of a check-in, talk to each other break episode, I think.
Yeah. It's fun talking to people, though.
Yes.
It's really fun talking to people.
We're not going to stop having guests on, but we want to periodically come together and...
Right, because it's our podcast. At the end of the day, it's our podcast. So.
It is.
Now, you were talking earlier. What did you want to discuss?
So I had experienced this myself in the past. You had mentioned it at one point too. When you're accessing part of yourself, your dominant side, your submissive side, for whatever reason, you have trouble turning it off or putting it away or being done with it. And like kind of transitioning back out of that. Sometimes it's not easy to just like
walk away from. Yeah.
Right. It can be tough to manage that. So I thought that would be an interesting topic for us to talk about and maybe see if we could come up with some advice or some pointers dealing with that, because it could be really hard. I mean, it's like very emotional.
Well, I always found too that nights after a really good party, going back into the real world was kind of hard. You know, like what happens in the dungeon stays in the dungeon for the most part, unless you're living a 24/7 lifestyle. So I think, yeah, just going back into the real, even like getting gas, like little things where you're just like kind of along with your day and you're like, why can't I order that person to be faster right now? Like, why is this, you feel testy because like you had everything you desire. You had power exchange, you had all these things, and then going back in the real world kind of catching up with you. It just, that's a thing. I know that thing very, very well.
The rude awakening.
Uh-huh.
For sure. Sometimes it could be fun. Like you had mentioned when we were talking with the Keep in Mind guys about how going back to the office and knowing you were part of something special and important. And so I think that part of it could be fun, like going back to your vanilla life and just knowing that. But then there is the part of you that's like, wow, like everything else seems pointless or not exciting or like what.
Right. I think it's a fair thing to say that kink enhances our vanilla life. Good kink can really enhance a vanilla life enormously, and like, yeah, like we talked about with them, like knowing that you did something that weekend that nobody else could even fathom, and just walking into the office with that confidence and that, ready to face the world kind of attitude. That's another real thing for sure. So, I mean, it is kind of a Pandora's box effect so to speak, but I think that part of learning on the top level, it would be mastery over it. And on the bottom level and the sub, like learning discipline and control and learning that you can't have it all the time, like
Hmm.
there's two different dynamics that both have to learn, that if you're not in a 24/7 dynamic, that you're learning mastery and you're learning control. So go your separate ways in the world and apply these. But part of the fun of I've found through education and through this podcast is just talking about it. Like it helps fill that just a tiny bit, just to have people that like want to talk kink, or people that are passionate about kink. Like that's always the fun part of being in the dungeon too. Like when people start talking to each other and like getting each other's stories, and not all like, I'm master so and so, you refer to me as that, like when in actuality it's Todd from accounting, it's just like, and that talking to this guy, like he's Todd from accounting, like, but it just
I was in a class once and someone was talking about how they access their dominant persona like on like once a week, like on that night, on like that night
Mhm.
where they go to the party, or where they seen, and then when they put their toys away, like it goes away, and like that's it. Like they're kind of like on and off with it. So I guess every person is different in that regard.
Well, and I think eh, with 24/7 you get a lot more cornerstones as well. You can kind of relax within your dynamic, you get to that place where you're just like, you don't feel that frenzy. You don't feel that like, I don't have anyone to dominate in my real world, or I don't, like it's all role play. Like the realization that it's all just role play and an illusion, control is an illusion, But living with someone who believes the same thing you do about this, and about that giving up that control brings them fulfillment, and you taking that control brings you fulfillment. Like that's a powerful thing. That's a super powerful thing, and it's a cornerstone to touch on. Like just, when you go about your day, you can really, really feel just a sense of calm of knowing that that person is doing for you, or that person is serving you, or you're seeing that person in a different way than most people. It just, whatever it is, whatever the dynamic fulfills for you, you know.
And then you were talking a little bit about from the top, the mastery of it. What is that like for you?
It's, I think it's it feels better than pushing them down, because you're acknowledging that they're there and bringing them to light, and again using that to an advantage of putting yourself in positions where you can be a leader, and
Mm-hmm.
mastering mastery of a skill is, I mean, it takes practice, it takes apprenticeship, it takes asking for help, it takes all these things. And if you think that you can do that without asking for help, without any of these other things, like I'd say that you're probably pretty wrong.
I think that's why we talk to our friends, like you were saying on this podcast. We could talk to each other. I'm very grateful for the friends that I have in kink because they get it. They're like, say less. They totally
Hmm.
understand what that feeling is like. From the bottom, as far as the discipline goes, I mean, I suggest to people that they make time for their dominance or their submission, like whether they're in a relationship or not, whether they're single or not, whether they're really practicing, try to make time for it on a regular basis. So I try to do that myself. But if I'm finding
But
my,
wait, but for themselves, like
yeah, so
dominant,
like,
like,
if you're, so maybe that would look like doing art around, that, or reading a book, or meditating, or in some way feeding into, like, how are you actively feeding into your development, because those things could help as well with not
mhm.
not being able to be in dynamic, so that you're addressing it. Maybe you're journaling, maybe you're, you know whatever, making a post on Instagram about it,
Sure.
things like that. So I try to recommend that people go for that discipline and acknowledging like this is a part of myself that needs to be fed. It needs to be fed regularly. If I'm not feeding it, these are the types of things that I experience, and how can I mitigate
Mhm.
that by affirmative action on my part,
Right.
addressing it. But it can be difficult. And then other thing we have now is we have so much online access to things. I mean, we know it's not
Mhm.
the same as being with someone in person. A lot of people now are self-collared and do self scenes and all this stuff, and
Mhm.
without getting too much into that, but you could do things for yourself in that way, you
Yeah,
know.
self scenes are really interesting to watch. If you've ever seen someone do self bondage or self any of that, it's a very interesting watch because it's just one person doing to themselves what we do to each other. It just, why wouldn't it work that way? It just, but you don't see it all that often. So when you do see it, it kind of stands out a little bit.
It's a way to do it.
Yeah,
Also,
it's
I think
not the same though. It
no,
isn't the
it's
same.
not. And you know what I was talking about last night too? That's not the same. But so someone else I was speaking to, we were saying that, um, sometimes you might have a friend or someone service top you, or whatever. Either way, and we were like, yeah, that's fun, but it's not the same. It's
Mhm.
not the same as having someone
It's
who's there for the same reasons.
it's just different.
It's just different,
Yeah.
right? Not bad, but it's different.
Yeah.
But friends are good for that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that scene friends and people within the scene that you can kind of geek out with over kink is essential.
Hmm.
Essential when you're not in a dynamic or have a dynamic going on.
Munches are
Like,
great for that too. Just getting together with people
mhm.
to talk. That might be an outlet.
Yeah, I've always been a fan of munches and seeing the same people every month and reconnecting with them. And even though I haven't seen them in 4 weeks, what happened in the 4 weeks we hadn't seen each other, and usually just the scenes they got into, and just, yeah, it was fun
It's
catching up with
fun.
them. Yeah.
Yeah. And such a resource too. I mean, just for your vanilla life things, you meet so many people that are in so many different fields. So thank God for our kink friends.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man.
What?
Just remembering to, when, I don't know why I went to the doctor or what I was doing in a medical office, and the guy was asking me what I did for a living, occupationally, and I was trying to explain it to him, and he was trying to tell me that he was a furry, but I don't think he had told anybody he was a furry yet. It was a weird situation.
He was opening up to you.
Yeah, totally, 100%. But it was funny because he wasn't a kink friendly doctor. I didn't use cap guide or anything to go to him, because it wasn't a kink related thing that but it just, he was asking me just making small talk, and I don't do small talk, so
It's interesting. It's interesting what people will open up to us about when you give them a little bit, when you're like, oh yeah, I'm kinky, or I do this or I do that or whatever. They're like, oh, they want to tell us.
uh-huh.
But so he was saying it without saying it. He didn't actually say those words, but he was beating around the bush kind of thing.
Yeah, he was being really just well, I have a collar and I have a suit, and I'm just okay. What does that look like? Leading him through it. And from what I could tell, yeah, I think he was trying to tell me he was a furry, but it's just funny how I bring that out of people.
Hmm.
So it's even non-king friends can become king friends, knowing me.
Yeah, that's our mission: converting vanillas.
Yep, 100 converting and
2022.
corrupting vanillas. You go on the conversion scale, I'll go on the corruption scale. We'll meet right in the middle. Hail Satan, bring him to the dark side.
It's not dark. It's so light. It's so light. That's what we're gonna talk about that in our dark play episode. But come on, it's just overexposure, like film. It's a good thing.
I mean, there have been many contributing factors to keep it dark. Yes, there's light, but like it's a feeling,
Hmm.
like you can't deny that that feeling exists, and just because there's lightness to it doesn't mean there's not the complete opposite of that.
Hmm. Yes. I think dark play could make us feel the lightest.
Well, absolutely,
I
because
think it
you're
could.
facing taboos and shit that people just don't like, even in the kink community, most times don't talk about,
Yeah. People are
you
really
know?
careful about that. Hmm.
Yeah. There's a reason the catharsis comes with that type of play because you're breaking norms that, and even the BDSM world.
Hmm. I think what we were talking about before with the mastery and the leadership, I think that goes both ways. Like I think both, either party could benefit from that when they're like if that energy is coming up and you can't put it like away, it's there for a reason. It's like speaking
Mm-hmm.
to you. It's like your stomach growling. It's
Right.
telling you that I need to be tended to in some way. So I like what you mentioned about putting yourself in leadership positions, maybe taking on something new, going and
Mm-hmm.
being social, doing those things.
Going to the
And
gym is good
and then
too.
I was gonna say that, yep. And as far as like the daily discipline goes and the working out and stuff, like gym is great, classes are great. Yeah, I think that's a really important thing too. We spoke a little bit in the first episode about how we can't really, be relying totally on our partners for discipline and structure in our days. Like we're responsible for that as well, like taking care of ourselves and all of those things.
Those of us that have partners, yes.
Right. Yes, those of us that have partners, find some kind of self-discipline and
Mm-hmm.
keeping small promises to yourself,
Right.
kind of build that trust with yourself and
Mm-hmm.
that foundation.
Well, and again, not being afraid to ask for help when it's needed too.
Hmm.
I mean, that's true community right there. I mean, it
Yeah.
just, I think that a lot of people or anybody has a hard time asking for help. I think that's inherently human at
Right.
all. I just think inherently human, we don't want to ask for help. We want to do it ourselves, do it
Hmm.
better, you know. But unless you can confidently do it better yourself, you're going to need help.
Right. Input.
Right. Right. So,
Do you think there's a difference between what it's like for a pro dom to put away that energy versus someone who's a casual dom? Because there's like a different type of demand on you as a pro in a way. And
I think being a pro has given me the confidence to see past the role play and see where my skills of leadership are needed in the world outside of the dungeon, if that
hmm.
makes sense. Like,
Hmm.
the things that I've learned being a pro dom have been acceptance of everybody until they fuck you over, obviously. But just a real general sense of acceptance and having the conversation around like what you're into and how we can meet halfway,
Hmm.
in that spot.
I think that's part of it too. When this energy comes up and you can't put it back in, it's like you have to kind of have that conversation with yourself about like, what do I need
Mhm.
right now? What would help this right now? But it's hard. It's hard to put it back in the cage. It's hard to unwind that.
Well, and I
Really good
think that
point.
you've also like made this point here that when we're not in dynamic or when we're not with a partner playing, practicing negotiation in other parts of your life, because we learned that from BDSM, like really kind of gives credence to the fact that we're still practicing, you know?
Yeah, using that skill set. That's a good point too. Like you were saying before, channeling those things into different places. But yeah,
Right.
relying on those skill sets.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, that never would have been there if BDSM hadn't have been in our lives.
Hmm. Yeah, it does oftentimes makes people more assertive and all of those things in
Mm-hmm.
their daily life, which is good. Boundaries, not wanting to compromise on certain things where you are willing to compromise.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But if you're having trouble
Absolutely.
putting your energy back in, we feel you because it happens to us too.
Yeah. Right. Don't blame it on the weed.
We can't put it away sometimes either. It's
Right.
tough. But I think also part of it too is like that, like I was saying before, that's that part of you that's talking to you that's like, you need to be feeding me more often, because it should there, you would ideally like to have a balance there where you can kind of, if it's not going away there, it's for a reason.
Mhm.
So I guess that's something to listen to with your intuition and yourself, and how much
Mhm.
space are you making for that. But it's hard to make the space, like you said, when you don't have a partner or you're not in dynamic. It's be really, really hard.
Yeah.
Be a tough one.
Yeah.
But we work around it. We figured things
Mhm.
out. And like we talk about it, like we were just saying, like just commiserating and like having someone to talk to and who understands is a big
Yeah,
part of it's just a big part of that too.
absolutely. With the creation of the internet and more people sharing their point of view on things, it gives me a little more hope, because people are in communities learning the right way to do things. Like, not everybody's doing it wrong. There are people that are really doing it right as well. I feel like sometimes that when people contact me, I have to be a little bit of a therapist, a little bit of an actor, a little bit of, whatever it is they need me to be, like. But learning about them and where it comes from and going deeper with them and forming relationship, it just that's the rich stuff. It's always been the rich stuff, you know but just, eh, from someone, again, who talks to a lot of strangers on a regular basis, just seeing the uptick and more people being able to communicate what it is that they need and what they require based on real life experience, rather than a Discord group or a Twitter following, whatever.
Mm-hmm. Right, right. Yeah. I mean, you need those experiences to be able to know. Otherwise, you're kind of just guessing or assuming, things that you might like. And then when you have it in practice, you
Mm-hmm.
may or may not change how you feel
Yeah.
about things. It happens all the time.
Yeah.
We did get a couple questions for this
Okay.
episode. Remember we were talking about that?
Okay. What are the questions?
Okay, so someone said, are there changes or trends in the kink community that make you hopeful? We talked about this.
Yeah, totally.
Things that make you hopeful. And what did you say? I think you laughed at first and you were like, nothing. And then we were like, no, you and I, like at the podcast, like this gives us hope. The
Yeah.
fact that
Yeah.
we're
This gives me hope for sure that I'm getting to educate people and lead, and people are actually listening.
people are
Yeah.
listening, and we have had so many amazing people on, and we're trying to have all different kinds of people on. So we've had some vanilla people on, but we've had mostly kinksters on from different
Mm-hmm.
areas, different fields, to give us their insight as well, because like we said, everyone practices this differently.
Mm-hmm.
I've been having fun on the podcast. Have you been having a good
Yeah,
time?
absolutely. I like watching it grow
Yeah,
and
I mean,
develop.
it is really cool. Yeah, we're so grateful to you guys for listening too. And we really do try to put those question boxes out there and stuff. So you guys could always message us too. Like you could DM us or comment on our posts and stuff. If there's something you're like, oh, I wish they would have talked about this, or they kind of breezed past this point or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
Because we want to be relevant. Of course, we just don't want to talk about things that we want to talk about. We want to be, giving new
Yeah,
perspectives.
absolutely.
Got another question. So this is kind of just what we were talking about before. Is there a kink that you like less the more that you know about it? Or have any of your early favorite kinks changed?
I think evolution is essential in kink. Staying stagnant is
I'm
boring.
nodding.
Yeah, one trick pony. One trick pony only knows one trick. you know.
Yeah. Aoife Murray Life, who I talked about in the education episode, she just made a point about how your limit list is really never fully complete. It's always something that's kind of evolving, because you'll learn more things, even if you've been in the
Mm-hmm.
community for a million years. You'll learn, oh, there's this new thing that I didn't know was a thing, and I know, but I know I don't want to do it, or I know I do want to do it, or how your
Mm-hmm.
limits and things change. And everyone liked it. She's always great, always says good things, right? And there's one person who like was not happy about it, and they were like, no, like your limits are your limits forever, and they're never going to change, and like meh, 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 and like if you're going past limits, like that's not good, and blah blah blah. It was like this whole thing. just missing the point kind of what she was saying.
Mhm.
That like, of course, like if you have limits and they're set and those are your set limits, yes, operate within that, but that doesn't mean that you can't be open to other things
Sure.
at a later time, of course. So, her and I were talking about that, and exactly the same thing. Just like the evolution is part, like that is the goal, that is the part of it for a lot of us. We want to get
Mhm.
into it because we know we want to try X, Y, and Z, but then you get, you learn so many different things, and even something you wouldn't normally be interested in, you're like, oh, I would never do degradation, I would never do this, but it's like, oh, with this person, maybe, you know what I mean, like, or in this
Mhm.
circumstance, maybe, like, how would that be? I always said I would never do it, but if I did do it, what would that be like? And
Mhm.
am I missing out on something? Am I missing out on learning about myself? And just like having that open curiosity to find out,
Totally.
I think, is an important thing.
Yeah, definitely. And the evolution of oneself, like, yeah, you said it, like that's why we do, some of us do this, you know.
Right.
But things that I know more about, I dislike. I don't even know. I don't think I've looked at any kink with like disdain.
Mm-hmm. Maybe types of practices, or you know what I mean, versus kinks, like maybe the way that people practice things, or like, well, all
Young
right, well,
daddy
here's an
doms.
I was gonna
Young
say,
daddy doms.
here we
Young,
go,
yeah,
yeah,
young,
here's one.
yeah,
Well,
young
here's one.
inexperienced.
Yeah, no, exactly that. Like in the beginning, a lot of times you don't know. And then I think sometimes people will combine their persona with their education, which I think is interesting. Like,
Hmm.
oh, like I'm the, whatever. I'm just making something up. Like I'm the mommy dom and I do things like this because this is how you know what I mean? Because this
Right.
is how it applies to my dynamic. And so I'm going to
Yeah.
teach it to you. And it's like,
Yeah.
well, not everyone you're teaching is going to have your, you know, dynamic, because sometimes I think that informs people's content too, which could be great if you're doing a niche thing, if you're like, oh, I'm talking to other mommy doms, or like I'm going to teach
Right.
about
But it's
that
like,
thing.
can't we learn neutrally? Can't
Right.
can't we have a neutral education session here where, like, good for you, but how does this, like, why do I need to care about this? I'm here
Hmm.
to learn about this, not who you are.
Right, yeah, no, that is part of it sometimes. Yeah, it's like I don't really care what you're, you know what I
And if
mean.
there are other people in the audience that it's relevant to that are listening, they'll ask questions on how it's relevant to your dynamic because they want to know, because you obviously have. But yeah, bringing your persona to educational.
Yeah, I think teaching niches could be really important,
Mm-hmm.
teaching relationship styles and things like that. Like if you're exploring DS in a marriage, that's different than exploring DS as a single person. And like there's going to be a
Mm-hmm.
disconnect there, and in some of the advice. But it
Right.
doesn't mean you can't get anything from the other person.
Right.
I think it needs to be open to that as well. But
Yeah. Agreed.
I have a couple of teachers I want to get on here. I haven't asked them yet, but I have a couple of teacher
Yeah.
kinkster friends, just not kink teachers, just teachers who are
Super kinky.
kinky, who
Nice.
I want to come on. Yeah, yeah. I think
Nice.
that
I
would be
would
a fun.
love to hear their opinion on things.
Yeah, it would be fun. I want to hear. I want to know what people are thinking about you. I asked my OnlyFans people. I was like, "What do you guys think of Master Arch?" And I want to see what they wrote. I like hearing people's feedback on you, because I think you're. I think that we did our first episode, and we did talk, and we did share a little bit about ourselves. But if someone just comes in, or they are just hearing, even if they did listen to the first episode, but they're just hearing the language you use and stuff, I think for a lot of people it's just a little like, like
Mm-hmm.
off-putting, like step
Mm-hmm.
back.
Right. Yep.
So
That's
I
me.
yeah, I think you have that effect. Yeah, but I don't think it's a
That's
bad
me.
thing. But
No.
I think the fin
No.
dom stuff confuses people. I think hearing words like slave and pig and all those things might be
Yeah.
hard for people. Not hard, but if they're not into kink, just not recognizing that those are terms of endearment and chosen
No.
terms and all that.
Right. 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 And it's the more you get to know someone too, you know. I mean,
You had said something to me once. You were kidding, but we were talking about like chauvinism and like that type of play.
mm-hmm.
And you had said something like, sometimes you just need to let the men talk, or something. Do you remember that? This is very early on we started talking. Do you remember saying this to me? You were an interesting person to meet. And
Yeah.
you don't remember saying that to me?
It sounds like me.
It does sound like you. You were like, sometimes you just need to. We were talking about submission. we were talking about submission, and you were like, yeah, sometimes you just need to sit down and let the men talk. And it made me laugh,
Yeah.
But what were you gonna say?
I know the phrase that I use, and I don't think it was that, but
Yes, it was. It was like very like sweet and like not mean at all.
it's not a thing of like pushing my degradation kink on people. Like it's fun to say this stuff out of context. Like it just, I don't know.
It was funny. It made me laugh. Maybe you
Yes.
weren't trying to scare me too bad or something. I don't know.
No, I wanted to do a podcast with you.
And I remember laughing about that. And like we were just talking about leadership and everything. Like I was like, oh, in my head, I was like, oh my God, yes. Like, where's that guy? Where's that man who could speak for me? Like, I would love to find someone who's just as smart as me, who has just as many good things to say, that I know is going to have my best interest in heart. Like, sure. Like, you want to talk to
Right.
me? Like, sure. Show me you're capable of that. Like I would, if I could, I would love to shut the fuck up. Do you think I like being this way? Do you guys think this is fun for me?
No, we don't. And and that's the value of it. And the confidence that I do have is that I don't just say that to random people. Sometimes I do, but
You did not. We're not random people on the street. Random people, maybe random kink people that approach you.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Let's say sure.
We're gonna go with that.
Yeah, let's go with that.
You're so feisty.
Let's go with that. So
yeah.
No, but it's not meant to be misogynistic. It's not meant to be.
Well, it was like that type of play. Like we were talking about that type of chauvinistic type of play.
Right. It's relevant to that and that alone.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. That's the only place it's acceptable.
I think that I think that some people might not get that you could play that way and also be someone who believes in equal rights, and you know what I mean, like all of those things. Like I don't think that people.
I don't worry about other people.
No, I know. Well, I mean, listen. Well, we're on a podcast, so I mean, we have to worry a little bit about but it's a point to make that just because there's a straight white man that's playing those types of things does not mean that they're not a feminist, or that they don't care about women's rights, or that they're not sticking up for women. In fact, probably only someone who does all of those things can really embody that energy in a way that's appealing.
Right.
Actual chauvinists aren't appealing.
Right. And I think too, like giving someone an avenue to be the person that submits to that is very empowering. It's strong people that require, the strongest hand.
Strongest people need the strongest hand. That's interesting.
Yeah, it's true. A lot of the women that I play with in the degradation role and the chauvinist role are people that are super strong in their life.
Right. Yeah, I think you kind of have to be.
Absolutely. Thin skin, not needed.
Yeah, it's not as fun either. It's like I think taking down a strong person is fun, especially for a man.
I'm not a fan. Yeah, I'm not a fan of weakness.
Mm-hmm.
That's where my predator comes out. When I see weakness, that's where my predator comes out.
Mm-hmm. But you like that in a sense, no?
In a sense,
you like the predator part of yourself. Are there any other ways that manifests, not coming from a place of like, oh, this person is weak, or is it like the weakness is maybe not like true weakness, but you just see a opportunity, maybe like an opportunity.
I'm opportunistic.
Yeah.
I'm opportunistic as fuck for sure. But I don't know. I don't think I've ever really like unpacked that and
okay,
what it is for me. But I know that both those statements are true.
All right, there we go.
And I own it. I mean, I own the fact that I'm opportunistic and a predator. So yes. This has been Kink Positive Podcast.
Right. Yeah, seriously.
Thanks for listening today, guys. Sorry this was a weird episode of just us, but I think it was necessary. We talked about some things, and
we needed a little break too. We needed to catch up and reevaluate. Give us your feedback on the podcast, what you guys think, how it's going. Right.
And please tell us explicitly what you think of me.
I'm getting it. Yeah. I'm getting feedback, apparently.
Yeah. So, well, I mean.
And tell your friends about the podcast. Share it with somebody. You know, share it. Just promote. share it, promote. Just playing it for us helps us.
Mhm.
I have
Mhm.
someone who messaged me and is asking, can I, I listen to it, but can I just keep playing it in the background to give you guys the views?
Yeah, and I mean,
That's
and
sweet.
feedback is always important. I mean, we appreciate any feedback we get from anybody,
I think we
you
should do
know.
some games on here together. I was thinking we could like play some games. We could do some. We could. Oh my god, you're tired already just hearing that.
Rolling my eyes. I hope the audience can hear the sound of me rolling my eyes to that idea. I hope everybody heard that. And thanks for checking us out today. Don't forget to check us out on patreon.com/kingpositivepodcast for some new tier options. And you can work one-on-one with us at allformasterarts.com, thatbadteacher.com, and onlyfans.com/thatbadteacher.
Yeah, you guys go check out my OnlyFans. I've been sharing a lot about what's going on in my DS dynamics there. I don't really put it all on FetLife or anywhere else, but I do have it on OnlyFans. So go check that out for sure. Don't
Or go
forget
check out my website and get absolutely nothing. But
your website is nice.
yeah,
You have some cute pictures on there just
yep,
on your like homepage.
fully functional and ready to go, ready to take your money at any time. Less ATM fees. Yeah, Blue Steel and Magnum both represented heavily on that website.
Blue Steel and Magnum.
Yeah,
Let me get a little Blue Steel.
that'll be the $30. That'll be the thing that gets him paying on Patreon this episode.
Yeah. I put
He
him on the
shows
spot.
he shows those beautiful blue eyes.
All right, guys, don't forget to stay kinky and stay positive.
And see you next Tuesday, cunts. What?
What am I tipping you for? You're gonna make me carbonara and you want a tip?
Yeah, absolutely.
Give you a tip. Catch these
Uh-huh.
hands.
Right. Here's your tip. Sell your Bitcoin. Forced intox is great.
We don't promote.
We do not promote forced
We don't.
intoxication, but when we
Yeah.
do, it's hilarious.
Yeah. I guess I get this is the advice that we came to. We literally we were like, first we were like, work out and like rechannel your stuff and journal and meditate. And then we were like, go to the gym. And then we were like,
Fuck it.
just
Get
smoke.
high. Just smoke weed. Smoke weed every day. Yeah.